Zephanorion. Hello, Zephanorion.
Hey there. Hey. Well, anyway, it's nice to meet you. You're kind of making some waves in the community, I see there. So yeah. Anyway, I want to ask you about something where. Well, I should go back a little bit. So I've
Okay.
been watching the backlog of some of your streams, and I did see the stream where you were on I believe it was the Cunt stream
Yep.
with Mycroft, and you asked Mycroft how many black women he slept with, right?
Okay.
And I believe he answered two.
Mm-hmm.
That he slept with two black women, and you used that as sort of evidence towards sexual selection, and saying like if you're white, you're going to most likely choose a white woman, and if you're black, you're most likely going to choose a black woman, right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that I didn't believe much. I didn't really put much belief in that answer. I think it's the answer he needed. So I didn't push further, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still wondering today if he was truthful there.
Well, it's not so much that he was truthful or not truthful. I mean, if he slept with 9 black women or whatever, you still made the assertion that he is going to most likely choose someone of his own race. But I'm more or less just interested in knowing, how would you explain when it comes to sexual selection, our genetics being an influence on what we sexualize or fetishize?
So we have evidence that people choose people of their race. That is a repeated observation. But what are you saying? Are you asking if the genetic choice pattern, if the choice pattern emerges from genetic causes?
I guess mainly what I'm saying is sexual philias that are non-beneficial to the human genome, right? So it's in our, from what I understand, because I'm not a biologist, from what I understand, our genetics are going to want to reproduce and reach out to another of our species who has the best genetics possible, right? So we can procreate and move up the evolutionary ladder, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question is, when it comes to sexual philias, or hell, just even when it comes to like, LGBT, gay, or just people who not anthropomorphize, but people who go outside fetishizing or sexualizing human stimuli, or in this case, they sexualize non-human stimuli. So it's like, say somebody who has like a sexual fetish for their fucking car or something, right? I'm pretty sure there's a fetish out there for that. But like, let's say if, people sexualize robots or machinery, something that doesn't actually look human, but they are attracted to something that is non-beneficial to human procreation, right? It's non-beneficial to our genome.
Yeah.
That's like how you get the guy who ends up sticking his dick in the gas tank, right? And so how does sexualizing non-human stimuli, how is that beneficial to the human genome?
So the way I see this, first, there's not very serious studies that would have been made on these fringe interests, like very weird sexual stuff. We wouldn't have the studies right now to say that it emerges from genetic causes. But the way I think about it is that as long as it's fringe and rare, you shouldn't be looking for an evolutionary explanation to it. Because what you most likely have is that you have evolution pushing sex very strongly, because sex is necessary for reproduction. So, of course, we have huge sexual urges, and of course there's orgasm, and of course it's always pleasurable to have your dick be touched, but evolution pushes this. Doesn't mean that evolution cannot push weird stuff at the border of the space. So if you have these urges that are pushed, and you have other urges, you have other features of the brain that are pushed. For example, it's good to be creative, and it's good to have fictive thoughts about things. Now you have all sorts of pressure onto the brain that lead to results that are weird, but each of these pressure makes sense. So it makes sense to be creative, and it makes sense to be attracted to like sex. Now you have a meddling of all these interests in the brain, which may lead 0.01% of the population to screw their dick in a gas tank.
So are you trying to say like that our genetics, our DNA, or the very evolutionary process behind us is trying to get us to transcend our genetic barriers or whatever and reach out to other non-anthropomorphic species or objects or whatever just to see if if there's a possibility of mating
No.
and maybe transcending humanity or something like that. Is it a matter of that particular question being unanswered or just not necessarily having been quantified yet and haven't been studied yet? There's no material out there for it? Or
Well, it's unanswered, but my theory, if I had to make an hypothesis on this, is these are just secondary effects of other things that are selected. So yes, we are selected for creativity, so this puts all sorts of ideas in our mind. Yes, we are selected for sexual attraction, so it puts all sorts of ideas in our mind. But evolution doesn't predict that you won't ever put your dick in a gas tank. Evolution makes it so that you will eventually get it out of the gas tank and put it in a woman.
Right, I understand where you're coming from, but there are several instances where people are stuck in their fetishes for life, where people actually never deviate from the deviation. They never actually stop sexualizing or fetishizing, say, robots or non-anthropomorphic stimuli. Like, say, for instance, pedophiles, for instance. The FBI manuals on those guys, there's actually no biological basis, or I should say justification, that would be beneficial to the genome or to our phenotype or whatever. I mean, there's no benefit to sexualizing, say, a child because the child obviously can't reproduce. I mean, they haven't reached puberty yet. So it's, that would just be one example, but I'm sure there's other fetishes or other examples out there that would, show that there is no deviation from the deviation.
Well, pedophilia is a very different case. There are evolutionary justifications for pedophilia. If you're in the state of nature and you don't live in a policed society, you're some guy in the forest, or you're in an isolated group enough of individuals that there's no such, that the parents of the kids will not be monitoring you. I mean, there's lots of people in our evolutionary history that have found themselves being children and going around nature because their two parents were dead and there were no one to care for them. And so there is an evolutionary justification to say, hey, I'm going to take these children in my house, and eventually she's going to become reproductive. And at that time, I would have babies. So pedophilia is probably a default mode of reproduction for a large part of our evolutionary history.
Yeah, but I'm mainly talking about a prepubescent child. Somebody who is they haven't reached puberty yet. You can't mate with them. We're going to be naturally attracted to breasts, figure. We're naturally going to see certain stimuli from a woman's body to make us want to procreate because childbearing hips, breasts show milk. Certain genetic features are being exhibited through the eyes and through the features of the female body or the male body. From either sexual perspective or perspective from either sex. But yeah, when it comes to a prepubescent child, there is no genetic benefit. There's no, it's a deviation, a major deviation from the sexual norm. Therefore, not, I don't see how it would be genetically viable.
But evolution doesn't keep you from masturbating on a child that's not yet reproductive. To the contrary, why not take the child in your home, habituate them to sex so that when they reach 14 years old, they will be pregnant? This is not a justification for pedophilia. It's a factual reality that starting a child at 7 years old who has lost his parent and you're in a jungle surviving and you feed that child until she's 14 years old, this seems like an evolutionary functional strategy that will not be selected against by evolution.
So you're saying outside of social norms and scientifically that pedophilia is justified?
Yeah, and if you look at the history of pedophilia victims, lots of them grow up to be adults that are interested in their abuser as a partner. So it works technically from an evolutionary standpoint.
Right. Yeah, and I'm totally sure you're not a pedophile.
No, I don't support pedophilia.
Yeah. Back on the original topic. So you're saying basically that when it comes to the where sexual fetishes and philias and stuff play in our psychology, that there's no actual there's not enough information out there yet to try to correlate it to how, whether it's environment or genetics. If I'm understanding you correctly.
Well, I've addressed this before. It's that not only don't we have an answer, but we won't have an answer probably because there doesn't need to be an evolutionary justification for everything you do. As I said, you might be interested in robots because there was an evolutionary pressure for intelligence and for tweaking stuff, and then you might be interested in sex because there was an evolutionary pressure for sex. It may create a percentage of individuals in our population that are interested in sex robots, but that doesn't mean that the interest for sex robots has evolved. For it to have evolved, I will need to have like a significant portion of the population to have that characteristics, and then I'd be wondering, well, how are these people reproducing? But the reality is that even being interested in sex robot is not an impediment on your reproductive ability. And if you find a guy that's interested in sex robots only and says that he does not fuck women, I will note that these people are often losers of the sexual selection game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like the Miggy doll fuckers out there. Yeah.
Now, someone on the chat says, you're here just to ask for a friend, right? You're not asking about your own preferences right now.
Yeah. No. I can guarantee you that I am totally not into fucking cars. I've got no sexual fetishes for Optimus Prime or anything that's non-anthropomorphic. So yeah, not into fucking cars. Never got my dick caught in the gas tank. So yeah, and definitely not into fucking children. But I think I'm clean. I have a clean bill of health on that one.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, and I'm gonna go back to my crowd video now.
Yeah. Take care, man. Have a good one.
Bye bye.